All right, welcome back, everyone. Looks like today we're going deep on agile team structures. And wow, you weren't kidding about wanting the full picture. We've got practical advice from KissFlow, all these different team types from Zebia, and even some of Tech Beacon's thoughts on autonomy and purpose. You're serious about getting this right.
Well, yeah, I mean, picking the right structure can really make or break a team, especially when you're trying to be agile, right?
For sure. But before we even get into the how of structuring these teams, I think maybe we should take a step back, like why are agile teams even structured the way they are? What are we actually trying to achieve here?
A lot of people just jump into the how-to without really understanding the agile philosophy.
Right, exactly. So let's back up for a sec. What is it about agile that makes it so different from those old school ways of working?
Well, at its core, agile is all about speed and efficiency. It's about delivering value faster and adapting to change better. Think about those old waterfall projects where everything was planned out way in advance and any little change was a huge headache.
Oh, tell me about it. Talk about a recipe for stress.
Exactly. Agile flips that on its head. It
Mm.
embraces change, makes it a constant, and then it empowers those teams to be flexible and responsive. So instead of these long, drawn-out development cycles, Agile breaks work down into those smaller, more manageable chunks, those sprints.
Okay, so sprints are all about delivering value in those shorter bursts, but how does that actually play out in how the teams are organized?
Well, to actually pull off this speed and flexibility, Agile teams are set up to be self-organizing and cross-functional, meaning they have all the skills they need to finish a task from beginning to end without needing to constantly go back and forth between different departments.
So it's kind of like having a mini company inside a bigger company. Each team has its own designers, developers, testers, everyone they need.
Exactly. And this cross-functionality is key because it gets rid of those bottlenecks and dependencies that slow down traditional teams.
Makes sense, but if we're talking about all this self-organization, does that mean there's like no structure or leadership in agile teams?
Not at all. Agile teams still have those clearly defined roles, but the focus is on empowering individuals and encouraging collaboration rather than relying on those strict top-down hierarchies.
Okay, so who are these key players then? Kissflow outlines some primary roles, and honestly, they sound pretty familiar, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, most Agile teams have a similar set of roles, even if the exact titles might be different.
Right. So first up, we've got the product owner. Kissflow calls them the voice of the customer, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Let's say you're building a brand new feature for some software. The product owner makes sure that feature is actually something your customers need and want. They're constantly gathering feedback, analyzing data, and making sure the team is building the right thing, not just building things right.
So they're like that bridge between the development team and the people who will actually use the product?
Exactly. They translate those user needs and business goals into clear requirements for the team. They're crucial.
For sure. What about the person who keeps everyone on track and, motivated? Not where the team lead comes in?
Absolutely. The team lead is like the conductor of an orchestra, making sure everything works together smoothly towards that shared goal. They facilitate communication, remove roadblocks, help the team stay focused and productive.
All right, so the team lead keeps the music flowing. Then you've got the musicians themselves, those team members, the ones who actually build the product.
Right. And the interesting thing is that Agile teams have a mix of different specialists, each with their own unique skills. You might have developers writing code, designers making those user interfaces, testers making sure everything works, and so on. This diversity is really important for taking on those complex projects.
I can see how that cross-functionality would really speed things up. But with all these different specialists, how do you make sure everyone is on the same page, working toward the same goal?
And that's where those Agile principles of self-organization and collaboration come in. Team members can make decisions together, share knowledge openly, and change their approach as needed. It's much more fluid and dynamic than traditional hierarchies.
Okay, got it. KissFlow also mentions stakeholders as a key role. Who are they exactly?
Stakeholders are basically anyone with a vested interest in the project. So this could include end users, customers, even other teams within the organization. Agile really stresses interacting with stakeholders often, making sure the product is meeting their needs, even as those needs change.
So it's not just about building a product in a vacuum, it's about constantly getting that feedback and making sure it aligns with what everyone wants, right?
Exactly. That constant feedback loop is really important to ensure the team is building the right thing and delivering value to the people who matter most.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. We know what an agile team is, we've met the key players, but now the big question, how do we actually organize these teams for maximum impact?
That's where things get really interesting. ZBA outlines a few different approaches, each with its own pluses and minuses.
Sounds like we're diving into the strategic nitty-gritty. I'm all for it. So let's start with that first team type.
All right, first up, we've got component-based teams.
Component-based teams, what are those all about?
Imagine building some complex machine, right? Yeah. Each team is responsible for building a specific component, and then all those components are put together to create the final product.
So like one team focuses on the engine, another on the transmission, something like that.
Exactly. Each team has those experts in their area, like expert mechanics for the engine. It's a great way to leverage those specialized skills and ensure each component is top-notch.
And this is where that balance between deep expertise and coordination comes in, right?
Absolutely. While component-based teams are great for that deep expertise, they also need a lot of coordination to make sure all those separate parts work together seamlessly.
Makes sense. You don't want your engine and transmission speaking different languages. AG actually gave a specific example of this, didn't they?
Yeah. They use the example of an online store. So you could have one team focusing on the payment processing, while another team handles search optimization. Both are crucial for the store to work, but they need very different expertise.
Okay, that's a great example. So component-based teams are all about leveraging those specialized skills to build complex systems. But what if you're dealing with a product that's just too big for a single team to handle, even with a team of experts?
Well, that's where feature-based teams come in. With feature-based teams, it's a little different. Instead of focusing on individual components, these teams own a whole customer-facing feature from start to finish.
So if we stick with that online store example, instead of separate teams for payments and search, you might have one team for the whole checkout experience and another handling, say, product browsing and recommendations.
You got it. Each team has all the skills they need to design, build, test, and launch their specific feature, giving them a ton of ownership and autonomy.
I can see how that would be super motivating for the teams. They're not just a small part of a bigger machine, they're responsible for a complete, valuable piece of the product.
And that's right. This often leads to higher quality work and more pride in what they're building.
But there's got to be some downsides, right? Nothing's perfect.
Of course, one challenge is making sure things stay consistent across all the features. With so many teams working independently, you need clear guidelines and communication to ensure a smooth user experience.
Yeah, you wouldn't want the checkout process to feel totally different from browsing. That would be so confusing for customers.
Exactly. So coordination and communication are key, just like with component-based teams. But instead of focusing on technical integration, the focus here is aligning design, user experience, and functionality across different features.
Okay, so feature-based teams are good for managing complexity and giving those teams more power, but they need careful attention to coordination and consistency. What about for smaller, simpler products? Is there a structure that works better for those?
Absolutely. For smaller products, or even early on in a startup, product-based teams can be really effective. This is that classic model where a small, close-knit team owns the entire product, soup to nuts.
So everyone's wearing lots of hats, contributing to everything.
Yep, you might have developers doing some design, designers helping with marketing, everyone pitching in on customer support. It's a really hands-on and collaborative way of doing things.
I can see how that builds a strong sense of ownership and accountability. Everyone's invested in the whole product, not just their little piece.
Exactly. And it can lead to faster decision-making and greater agility because the team doesn't have to deal with complicated hierarchies or dependencies.
But as with everything, there must be a downside. When would this approach not be the best choice?
Well, as that product grows and gets more complex, this model can become harder to maintain. You might start to see bottlenecks as the team struggles to keep up with the workload and the different skills needed. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole at some point.
So it's good for the early stages when you need maximum flexibility, but you'll probably need to adapt as you grow.
That's right. And that's when those other team types, like the component-based or feature-based teams, might become a better fit.
All right, so we've got component-based teams for deep expertise, feature-based teams for managing those bigger products, and product-based teams for those small agile projects. Are there any other ways to organize these agile teams?
There's one more that's getting more and more popular, especially as businesses focus more on that whole customer experience. We call these customer journey teams.
Customer journey teams, huh? That sounds interesting. What's the main idea there?
These teams go beyond just building the product. They're all about optimizing the entire customer experience from the very first time someone interacts with your brand to their ongoing engagement.
So it's not just about the product itself, it's about the whole experience the customer has with your company.
Precisely. Imagine someone's buying a new TV from that online store we talked about. A customer journey team might focus on streamlining that entire process, from browsing and comparing different models to actually buying it, setting it up, even getting support or troubleshooting tips later on.
That's a pretty comprehensive approach. Wow.
It is. And it's becoming more and more important now that customers have so many choices. A good experience can be what makes a business stand out.
I see your point, yeah. So how are these customer journey teams structured? Are they organized around like different stages of the customer journey?
They can be, yeah. For example, you might have one team focused on getting those new customers, another team on converting them into buyers, another team on building long-term customer loyalty.
Okay, so they can be structured in different ways depending on the needs of the business and its customers. This is really cool. But it seems like it would take a ton of collaboration across teams, right? How do you make sure everyone's on the same page about that overall customer experience?
You're right, that's important. Customer journey teams rely a lot on shared goals, open communication, and understanding the customer's perspective. They often use tools like those customer journey maps to visualize the entire experience and find areas to improve.
So they're always looking for ways to make that customer journey smoother, more enjoyable, and valuable.
Exactly. And this focus on the customer is what makes these teams so unique and powerful. It's not just about building a good product, it's about creating a great experience that builds those lasting relationships with your customers.
All right, so we've explored 4 different ways to organize Agile teams: component-based, feature-based, product-based, and now these customer journey teams. Each has its own advantages and challenges depending on the situation. But I gotta ask,
Go ahead, what's on your mind?
we've got all these cool team types, but how do you actually decide which one is best for your specific situation? How do you even start?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And luckily, Zebia gives us some guidance. They highlight 3 really crucial things to think about: responsibility, coordination, and sustainability.
Ooh, those sound important. Let's break those down.
Absolutely. Let's start with responsibility.
Okay, responsibility. What does that actually mean in the world of Agile teams?
It's all about making sure that no matter how the team is structured, it's super clear who owns what. Every team member needs to understand their role and how it contributes to the success of the product or the whole project.
So no matter how the team is organized, everyone knows what they're in charge of and who to go to for help when they need it.
Exactly. Shared success, shared responsibility, everyone's in it together.
That makes a lot of sense. It probably helps to prevent those situations where things fall through the cracks because nobody was specifically responsible. All right, what's next?
Next up is coordination.
Coordination. I can imagine that gets more and more important as those teams become more complex and specialized, like those component-based teams we discussed.
Absolutely. The more complex that team structure, the more important it is to have good communication channels and processes.
And it's not just about preventing things from falling through the cracks. Good coordination is also about those smooth handoffs between teams, managing those dependencies, and ultimately delivering a product that is cohesive and well integrated, right?
You're absolutely right. Without that strong coordination, you risk delays, miscommunication, and ultimately a product that's not so great.
Got it. So responsibility is about clarity of roles and ownership, and coordination is about ensuring smooth communication and collaboration between those teams. What about that final consideration? What was it again?
The final, and maybe the most important consideration, is sustainability.
Sustainability. That's an interesting one. How does that apply to agile team structures?
It's about building a structure that can adapt to change, that can evolve as the product, the market, even the organization itself changes and grows. It's about thinking long term.
So it's not just about meeting those immediate needs of a project. It's about creating a structure that can handle uncertainty and constant change.
That's it. You need a team structure that can handle challenges, adapt to new technologies, and embrace those changing customer demands. Think of it like building a house. If the foundation is strong, the house can withstand almost anything.
That's a great analogy, but how do you actually figure out how sustainable a team structure is? Any warning signs to look out for?
Absolutely. One warning sign is rigidity. If a team structure is too inflexible, too set in its ways, it's going to struggle to adapt. Another is over-specialization. If team members are too narrowly focused, they might have trouble adapting to new challenges or learning new skills.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between specialization and being able to adapt.
You got it. You need a structure that allows for deep expertise while also fostering flexibility and continuous learning.
Okay, so when we're choosing a team structure, we need to keep those three things in mind: responsibility, coordination, and sustainability. Those are our guiding principles. But beyond just the structure itself, isn't there something deeper at play here? Something about the culture and values of an agile team?
You're hitting on something really important there. The structure is just one piece of the puzzle. To really make Agile work, you need to build an environment that embraces the core principles and the reasons behind it.
I love that. Tell me more about this deeper level of agile.
It's not enough to just pick a team structure and expect magic to happen. We need to understand why things work the way they do in Agile. And that's where TechBeacon brings up some great points. They really emphasize autonomy, mastery, and purpose in Agile teams.
Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Those sound powerful. What do they actually mean?
Let's start with autonomy. This is all about giving those teams the freedom and flexibility to make their own decisions, to take ownership of their work, and to figure out the best ways to reach their goals.
So it's that self-organization thing we talked about, taken to the next level.
Exactly. It's about trusting teams to manage their own time, their own processes, and their own solutions.
And why is this autonomy so important?
Because it leads to more engagement, creativity, and innovation. When people feel like they own their work, they're more invested in its success. They're more likely to come up with new ideas and go the extra mile.
Makes sense. It's like the difference between being told what to do and being able to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
You're just naturally more motivated when you have that sense of ownership.
You're exactly right. And this autonomy also lets teams be more responsive to change. They can adapt quickly to new info, new challenges, new opportunities, like giving them the keys to the car and letting them choose the best route?
Okay, so autonomy is all about empowering teams and giving them the freedom to excel. What about mastery? What does that look like?
Mastery is about creating a culture of constantly learning and improving. It's about encouraging team members to build their skills, expand their knowledge, and really aim for excellence in what they do.
So it's not just about finishing the task, it's about constantly getting better at what you do every step of the way.
That's it. And this mastery isn't just about individual skills. It's also about the team's understanding of the product, the market, and the customer. It's about always looking for ways to improve, both as individuals and as a team.
How do you actually build this sense of mastery within a team? How do you encourage that?
By giving them chances to grow and develop, encourage them to experiment, share knowledge, and mentor each other. Create a culture where learning is valued and celebrated, not seen as extra work.
So it's about investing in your team's development, both individually and as a group.
Absolutely. And the payoff is huge. Mastery leads to higher quality work, more innovation, and a more engaged team. It's a win-win for everyone.
I love it. Okay, we've talked about autonomy and mastery. Now, what about purpose? That seems super important, but also kind of tricky to define sometimes.
It is, and it's often overlooked. Purpose is all about connecting the team's work to a bigger goal, to something that actually makes a difference.
So it's about understanding the why behind all the what.
Exactly. It's about seeing how your work contributes to the overall success of the product, the company, or even something bigger than that. It's about finding meaning and motivation in what you do.
Right, because if you don't understand the purpose, it's just a bunch of tasks, right? No real connection to the bigger picture.
Exactly. And that can lead to people not caring, feeling apathetic, and ultimately producing lower quality work. People need to feel like they're part of something bigger, something worth working towards.
So how do you actually instill this sense of purpose within an agile team? How do you make them see that bigger picture?
It starts with clear communication. You need to share the company's vision, the product's goals, and how the team's work contributes to those larger objectives. Everyone needs to understand where their individual efforts fit in.
So it's about connecting the dots, showing the team how their efforts contribute to the overall success.
That's the key. And it's also about celebrating those wins, recognizing the team's contributions, and highlighting the positive impact their work is having.
Because everyone wants to feel like they're making a difference.
Exactly. And when people feel that sense of purpose,
Mhm.
they're more motivated, more engaged, and more likely to go above and beyond. They're not just working for a paycheck. They're working towards something they actually believe in.
Okay, so Tech Beacon argues that autonomy, mastery, and purpose are essential for creating those really high-performing agile teams.
You got it. And what's interesting is how these concepts actually connect back to those three considerations we talked about before: responsibility, coordination, and sustainability.
Oh, I love those connections. Tell me more about how they tie together.
Well, think about it. A team with autonomy is inherently more responsible. They have the power to own their work and make decisions. And that fosters a sense of accountability.
It's like they're not just following orders, they're actively shaping the outcome, right?
Exactly. And mastery, that constant learning and improvement, leads to better coordination. When team members are always developing their skills and knowledge, they're better at communicating, collaborating, and anticipating potential problems.
So mastery leads to more efficiency and effectiveness overall.
Precisely. And finally, purpose is the key to sustainability. When a team understands the why behind their work, when they're connected to that larger goal, they're more resilient, adaptable, and more likely to stay engaged in the long run.
So it's not just about getting through the next sprint, it's about building something meaningful that lasts.
You got it. And that's what makes these concepts so powerful. They all work together, creating this positive cycle that drives agile teams to succeed. It's like a flywheel. Once it gets spinning, it generates its own momentum.
Wow, that's a great image. But I have to admit, it's a little overwhelming thinking about how to actually implement all of this. Where do you even begin? It seems like a lot.
That's a great question. It's something every organization struggles with. There's no one-size-fits-all answer, but there are practical things you can do to start cultivating these principles within your teams.
All right, I'm all ears. What are some actionable tips we can take away from this? How do we start making this happen?
Well, first and foremost, focus on creating open communication and transparency. Build a culture where people feel comfortable sharing their ideas, their struggles, and their goals. Break down those walls and encourage open conversations.
So it's all about building trust and that feeling of psychological safety within the team.
Exactly. People need to feel safe to speak up, to experiment, and to make mistakes without being judged. They need to know that their voices matter and their contributions are valued.
Right. It's hard to be creative or take ownership if you're always worried about getting punished for taking risks or speaking your mind. Okay, what else can we do?
Empower your teams to actually make decisions and own their work. Give them the authority and freedom to figure out the best ways to reach their goals. Don't micromanage, trust their expertise and their judgment.
So it's about letting go of that command and control style and trusting the team to self-organize and find solutions.
Exactly. And this doesn't mean getting rid of all structure or guidance. It's about setting clear goals and boundaries while giving teams the flexibility to work within them.
Okay, so we're fostering open communication, empowering teams, and what was that third tip?
Invest in your team's development. Give them opportunities to learn, grow, and mentor each other. Encourage them to explore new skills, attend conferences, share their knowledge.
So it's about recognizing that learning is a continuous journey, not just a one-time event.
Exactly. It's an investment that pays off in the long run. A team that is constantly learning and growing is more adaptable, more innovative, and more resilient in the face of change, like giving them the tools and resources they need to build that amazing house we talked about, brick by brick.
I love that. So we've got those three actionable tips. Foster open communication, empower teams, and invest in their development. That's a great starting point for anyone looking to embrace those agile principles.
Absolutely. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. There will be bumps along the way, but the key is to keep learning, keep adapting, and keep working towards a culture that supports autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Well said. Speaking of journeys, this deep dive into agile team structures has been quite the ride. We've explored different ways to organize teams, talked about those crucial considerations, and even uncovered the why behind these agile methodologies.
It's been a really insightful exploration. I think we've given our listener a lot to think about as they go on their own agile journey.
Definitely. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on something we talked about earlier, those hands-on workshops for mastering these agile concepts.
Great point. Because theory is one thing, but actually experiencing agile is a whole different level of learning.
Like the difference between reading a code book and actually cooking a delicious meal, right?
Perfect analogy. These workshops give you that safe space to try things out, make mistakes, and learn from those experiences, all without those real-world pressures.
And you get to learn from people who've actually been there, done that, and can share their hard-earned wisdom.
Exactly. They can guide you, mentor you, and answer those practical questions that you might not find in a book.
So if anyone's feeling inspired to step up their agile game, finding a good workshop could be a real game changer.
I agree 100%. It's an investment in your team's growth, your organization's success, and even your own professional development. It's like having a master chef teaching you all the tricks in the kitchen.
Okay, so we've covered different team types, talked about those key considerations, explored the deeper reasons behind Agile, and even talked about how transformative those hands-on workshops can be. What a journey. But as we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought, something to think about as they continue their Agile journey.
I like it. One last bit of inspiration to help them build those amazing Agile teams.
And I think it comes down to this. It's not just about the structures, it's about the people. It's about creating a culture that empowers individuals, encourages teamwork, and embraces constant learning.
That's perfect, because ultimately, Agile isn't a rigid set of rules. It's a way of thinking and working together to achieve great things.
And on that note, I think that's a wrap for our deep dive today. It's been awesome exploring these ideas with you.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for being such a fantastic guide through this whole world of Agile teams.
And to you, our listener, thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope you've learned something valuable and are feeling inspired to take your Agile teams to the next level. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep those Agile fires burning. We'll catch you next time. Happy organizing.
So we've really dug deep into this, haven't we? From those different team types to that bigger idea of like building a whole Agile mindset.
Yeah, it's been a journey. What I found really interesting is how you've tied those practical structural things to those deeper principles of autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Well, you've been amazing at explaining not just what those terms mean, but why they're so important for building teams that actually perform well.
And remember, this is just the start of your Agile journey. There's always something new to learn and experiment with, and ways to improve your approach.
That's what I love about Agile. It's not some set of rules, it's a philosophy that's always evolving. It's about finding what works for your situation and being ready to adapt as you learn. Exactly. That adaptability, that willingness to change, that's what sets Agile apart from those older ways of working.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we talked about before. Those hands-on Agile workshops. You said they could be a real game changer for anyone wanting to improve their Agile skills.
Absolutely. Think about it. You can read all you want, but nothing beats experiencing Agile firsthand, right?
Hey, it's like learning to swim. You can read about it and watch videos, but you won't really get it until you're in the water.
Perfect analogy. Those workshops give you that safe space to experiment, to mess up, and to learn from those mistakes without the pressure of real-world projects, like training wheels for your Agile journey.
And you get to learn from people who have actually done this stuff, who've been there, and can share what they've learned.
Right? They can guide you, mentor you, and answer those questions you won't find in any book.
So, to anyone listening who's feeling inspired, I'd say check out a good Agile workshop near you.
Definitely worth it. It's an investment in yourself, your team, and your whole organization.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into organizing Agile teams. We covered a lot, from different structures to building that Agile mindset.
It's been a fantastic journey, and I hope our listener feels ready to go out and build those amazing Agile teams.
Key too. And remember, it's not just about picking the right structure or following some set of rules. It's about embracing those core Agile values: collaboration, adaptability, and always striving to improve.
Well said. Because ultimately, Agile is about people working together to achieve great things.
And with that, I want to thank you so much for being such a fantastic guide on this deep dive. I really enjoyed exploring these ideas with you.
The pleasure was mine. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us. We hope you've gotten some great insights and inspiration to take your Agile practices to the next level. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep that Agile passion alive. See you next time.
Happy organizing, everyone.